Americans were all born different and unique, but one of the most fundamental things about being an American is acknowledging inequality, or something that's not right, and taking action in order to make things right. America has gone through some of the most important changes throughout history in order to keep their ideals of liberty, opportunity, rights, and equality, including events like the Revolutionary War, in which we fought for our rights, freedom, and independence as a whole, and the Civil Rights Movement, which African Americans struggled for their social equality and respect. I could go more and more in depth into all of these important events in history, but I believe one of the biggest changes throughout American history is giving women and men equal opportunities and rights.
One of the most powerful and positive movements towards getting equal rights for women is in 1848, when a women's rights convention was held in Seneca Falls, New York, starting the women's suffrage.
The women's suffrage is one of the most important events in history and strongly shows the meaning of what it's like to be an American. The women saw their problem, which was not being treated equally, and then fighting and protesting for those rights to be turned into amendments, rights, and laws. For women, before the 21st century, they were treated completely different than they are treated today, and there was no equality whatsoever. Over time, women like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Stanton, who established the National Women's Suffrage Association, started to protest to Congress saying that there should be an amendment giving women the right to vote. The women's suffrage then became a massive movement with millions and millions of women wanting the right to vote. Movement, there were two main organizations. The first was the National Women's Suffrage Association, or NAWSA, led by Carrie Chapman Catt, and with over 1 million members, they campaigned to enfranchise women in different states. The second was the National Women's Party, led by Alice Paul, which went up to the White House to demand for them to pass the Women's Suffrage Amendment. Then, in the 1920s, both organizations joined together to ratify the 19th Amendment, which states, "The rights of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be abridged or denied by the United States or by any state on the account of sex."
While protesting and fighting, they got the Civil Rights Act passed in 1964 to get rid of sex discrimination in the workplace. They also created a national organization for women to make sure that the Civil Rights Act would be enforced. Then, in 1978, they created special rights for pregnant women to ensure that they will still have their jobs after giving birth, and laws were also passed in 1993 to 1994 to protect women of brutality and bigotry. Is there still inequality with women in America that the government should be concerned about?
Yes, I think there is still a wage gap, which is outrageous in 2019, that we still have a wage gap between men and women. Men are more often promoted at work, and are considered better candidates sometimes because they don't have a family and they're not concerned about getting pregnant and going on maternity leave and this and that. So there is still a wage gap, which is ridiculous. And I work in the government and in mostly male profession, but I don't know how we combat that other than time and effort and energy.
All right. So what, in your opinion, is the most important right and change that women got throughout the years?
It's definitely, I think it's the right to vote. Through the women's suffrage and all of that, it kind of laid the foundation of hey, we're equal. We should be treated equal. I should be a citizen in the eyes of my country. We need to kind of take part. I have the right to vote and pick my representatives and who make the laws and all that kind of good stuff. But I think that really laid it out so we could move further after that.
If, let's say, Susan B. Anthony did not speak up or lead the women's suffrage, do you think America would eventually realize that women were not inferior to men?
I think it would. The world is getting so much smaller with the internet and cell phones and computers and everything. So I think eventually it would have happened. The concern, if she didn't, because it took a lot for her to stand up for women's rights and kind of put herself out there in a male-driven world where women were considered inferior. So I think, I'm glad she did. Mm-hmm. But I think you would hope that someone else would have stood up if she didn't. But I'm glad she did.
Women today still face sexism and discrimination, but now they are allowed to study, have any job they would like, and now have a legal identity in America. They fought for their rights when they saw how unequally treated they were, and now have more laws protecting their rights in the 21st century. Even though they still face discrimination, violence, and unequal treatment because of their gender, women still have made a ton of progress towards getting their rights since the 1920s.
International Women's Year, a year in which member nations will focus their attention on ways to further advance the status of women around the world.
This was only the beginning for women to get their equal rights, liberty, opportunity, and equality that they deserve.